Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I have a lot to talk about today. We'll start off with some discussion with representatives of Alaska Airlines and Delta Airlines and leaders from the Port of Seattle. We're very pleased we're making major progress on keeping our travelers safe in the air. Today we're announcing new protocols that I believe will greatly benefit the traveling public. We've worked with airlines, the ports, the public to come up with these protocols. They're going to help keep us safe in the air. This is a statewide approach for our COVID-19 response. Obviously, it's for our traveling public, but it's also for the protection of the workers at our ports, at our airports, and on our airlines, and the crews in the aviation sector. So what we're talking about today does not apply just to SeaTac. It applies to our airports in Spokane and Pullman and Tri-Cities and Everett and others. So the steps we're taking today are going to help those who do decide to fly during this pandemic. As you know, I've previously written to the national government asking for a uniform federal standard to protect workers and the traveling public in aviation. Unfortunately, the administration has refused to issue such uniform standards. So states have had somewhat limits on what we can do because of that federal law, because that federal law preempts some of the things we can do in our state. But we do have things we can do and we should do and we are going to do today. We also have great partners to be able to do this, obviously, in the aviation industry. And a couple of those leaders will address you shortly. And they are taking further steps themselves, which I hope they can talk about. And I want to express my appreciation to them for their efforts to keep us all safe. So again, today these are baseline requirements that we are rolling out. Our airline partners and airports in Washington, I think, have done a superb job under very trying circumstances. So if I just go through some of these protocols, briefly, today's guidance will require face coverings in all parts of an airport where we have authority, and that's basically upstream of the security gate. So that's basically anywhere where the public can be upstream of the TSA security line. We're going to have signage regarding spacing. We'll have spacing for physical distancing. We'll have protective barriers between travelers and workers. This is important. You know, these workers are exposed to so many thousands of people. We want to keep them and their family safe when they go home. We have sanitizer and disinfectant protocols. And the airport vendors and businesses will need to follow our state and county health requirements. We've also encouraged airlines to require health screening questionnaires for passengers regarding COVID exposure or symptoms, and require passengers to abide by face covering and physical distancing requirements in order to get a boarding pass. And I'm pleased to say most airlines are in fact doing that. So today we've got some real leaders in the industry, and I want to thank them. With that, I'd like to call on Vice President of Safety and Security for Alaska Airlines, Max Tidwell. Max, thank you for your leadership and look forward to your comments.
Okay, well, thank you, Governor. It really is an honor to be here. As you said, my name is Max Tidwell. I am the Vice President of Safety and Security for Alaska Air Group, which covers Alaska and Horizon. I wanted to start with thanking you, Governor, for all your work that you've done protecting these residents of the state of Washington throughout this pandemic, as well as the wildfires that we've recently experienced. It truly is unprecedented times as we work through these crises. And all of us here at Alaska, our hearts go out to all those individuals, families, and businesses that have been affected by these crises as well. I want to thank our airport partners across the state for all the work that they've done and the support that they've provided to help us make the safest, healthiest environment for our guests and our employees. So being headquartered here in the state of Washington, with more than 10,000 employees working in our state, the safety of our guests, our employees, and our communities is critical. So COVID has fundamentally changed our travel experience. But one thing remains the same, is how we care and prioritize safety for all of our guests, our employees, our communities, as well as the many industry partners that we have. So over the last 7 months, we've taken a layered approach of safety in coordination with our UW medical advisors, industry experts, and our government officials to provide as much protection as we can. Over 100 items we've implemented to make sure that we're able to maintain that safe environment for travel. Some of these things, we call that our next level of care. It includes things like required health agreements for each passenger before they travel with us. Our no mask, no travel policy. We're continuing to block center seats through the end of November, and we're reducing the number of seats that we sell on our regional aircraft to make sure we're able to provide some spacing. We've enhanced our aircraft and airport cleaning protocols to make sure that we're doing everything we can to minimize the tactile spread of this virus. We're using EPA sanitizers and fogging electrostatic sprayers on our aircraft, and our aircraft filtration systems with our HEPA filters have been proven to be 99.9+% effective on filtering viruses similar to the COVID-2. The airflow in our aircraft also provides a great mitigation to the potential spread of vapor in our aircraft. The air is transferred in and out every 2 to 3 minutes. We have a complete cycle of air. We're also making technology work harder for us. As you check into the airport, each time you're going to find fewer and fewer touch points to go along with that effort to reduce the tactile spread of this virus. Soon you'll be able to print your bag tag from your iPhone, pay all of your credit card fees through having a card on file or through your phone. We're really limiting that potential. We also know that plans change, especially in this environment. And so we've eliminated our change fees all across our system permanently. We're also working closely with the industry, some of our manufacturers and peers, on additional safety elements that we can implement as an industry to make sure we're able to gain the confidence of our travelers and get them back in the air. This summer, we partnered with the Port of Seattle and did temperature testing on 10,000 guests, and we use that data to send to the TSA and the government health officials to kind of set a protocol and a standard for what could be done and the effectiveness of that. We're staying close with top scientists and medical experts, currently working with Harvard's National Preparedness Leadership Institute, who has embarked on a study to validate many of these initiatives that have been implemented across the industry to help protect our people. They published a portion of one of their studies last week on the effectiveness of face masks in air travel, and they found them to be very effective, especially when they're layered with the other mitigating items that you have recommended: the cleaning, the spacing, the airflow. We're encouraged to see evidence that our procedures and practices are working. We have great employees, we have great guests, we want to protect them at all costs. And these many layers of protection that we're putting in place are having a positive result. We're also proud to be working with our peers in the airline industry. The safety of all airlines is paramount at this time. It's not about being first, it's about doing what's right for the public, doing what's right for the industry, doing what's right for the economy. So the bottom line, flying is safe, and when our home state is ready to fly, our 20,000 plus employees at Alaska and Horizon are eager to welcome you back on board. As a hopeful sign of things opening up, last week the state of Hawaii announced that they would allow people to come in and vacation with a COVID test. So that's a sign that things are starting to open up, things are starting to stabilize, but we cannot let our guard down. We've got to make sure that we continue to push and improve our procedures. So we are working with testing providers across the country to make sure that travelers are able to access pre-travel testing and be able to go about and go on a vacation to Hawaii or go to Alaska or take a dream trip. So in closing, thank you, Governor Inslee, for all you're doing to partner with our communities, businesses, and the residents here in Washington State to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Alaska is honored to provide an essential service to all of our communities, our guests, our people, and as we work to stabilize this virus and get our economy back on track and to make sure we do it safe. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Max, for your leadership and your whole team. We now have Tony Gonchar, who's Vice President of the Seattle region for Delta Airlines. Tony, looking forward to your comments.
Thank you, Governor Inslee, for your leadership throughout this crisis. You've helped save thousands of lives and protect countless jobs here in Washington, and we're truly grateful for your efforts. I also want to thank you for your leadership in providing yet another assurance to air passengers in Washington about the minimum standards they will encounter throughout the travel ribbon. And as a board member of Visit Seattle, I was thrilled by your announcement earlier this week that will allow for the safe return of meetings and events to Washington. This is a crucial business for the city of Seattle in particular, and we're excited that we are moving in the direction of regaining more and more safe openings of the economy. As those visitors return, I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of Delta Airlines to discuss a few of the many measures we've put in place as our commitment to customers and employees as part of what we call the Delta Care Standard. As part of that commitment, I'd like to start off by announcing that next week, Delta will initiate a temperature screening pilot for Delta customers traveling outbound from SeaTac. This is one of several temperature pilots we've conducted at airports across the U.S. The Seattle pilot will allow us to focus on learning if there are differences in operation and effectiveness that need to be considered with the onset of colder weather, heavier clothing, and the start of the flu season. So beginning on October 1st, we will have a thermal camera that Delta customers will walk by at Security Checkpoint 2. This is a 3-week test running Thursday to Monday from 7 a.m. to noon. So 5 days a week, 5 hours a day. Passengers who signal a fever as they walk past the scanner will be asked to have a secondary temperature screening done with an infrared handheld no-touch thermometer. Passenger has a temperature at or above 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, they'll be rebooked or refunded using Delta's Fly Again process and be placed on a health safety restriction list for 14 days. We're excited about this test, especially at this time of the year, and we look forward to its implementation next week. I want to thank Wendy Ryder, Lance Lyttle, and the rest of the port staff for their partnership on this program and all of our collaborative efforts at SeaTac. I also want to take a few moments to discuss some of the additional measures we've implemented as layers of protection from the moment that you check in for your flight to the moment that you retrieve your bags at your destination. First, Delta's established the Airlines' first and only Global Cleanliness Division, a new organization with Delta that is dedicated to innovating and evolving our already high standards for cleanliness. This team is now a permanent fixture in our company's org chart and demonstrates how we are making permanent investments to keep passengers and employees safe. We're also the only airline blocking middle seats through the holidays. We've extended one of our key health and safety protocols this winter holiday season by blocking the selection of middle seats and limiting the number of customers on board through January 6th of next year. We thoroughly sanitize every Delta flight every day prior to boarding using electrostatic sprayers and are the only airline that's been doing this since May. Following this process, cleaning crews complete an extensive checklist of cleaning procedures using the same high-grade disinfectant to wipe down personal and common areas of the cabin. If an aircraft doesn't pass our flight crew spot check before passengers board, they can hold the flight back and call the cleaning crew back onto the plane. Delta is also the only airline testing employees through a unique partnership between Delta, the Mayo Clinic, Quest Diagnostics, and our newest partner, CVS. Employees have access to testing through on-site clinics, at-home testing, and our flight crews have rapid testing available in our airport employee lounges that can provide test results in as little as 15 minutes. We also stand firmly behind our policy requiring every customer and employee to wear face masks when they travel with us and take immediate action against those who refuse to comply. You'll continue to hear about our efforts going forward. In the meantime, and if you are interested, we are conducting airport tours that demonstrate our safety and cleaning procedures, not just at SeaTac, but at over 60 airports in the United States and internationally. I personally conducted over 20 of these tours myself with corporate accounts, civic leaders, and medical professionals, and we've incorporated their feedback into our procedures. I want to thank you for your time today, and especially want to thank the more than 3,000 Delta employees in the Seattle area who are making travel safe for flyers every day, every flight in and out of Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and please thank your team for us. We now have Lance Lyttle, who's the Managing Director of Aviation for the Port of Seattle. Lance.
Thank you. So I want to begin by thanking Governor Inslee for his leadership and recognition of the importance of air transportation to our region and the entire state. We share the governor's commitment to traveler health and safety. Restoring confidence in air travel is absolutely critical to our economic recovery, and the governor's commercial air service requirements represent an important step towards that goal. We are grateful to the governor and his team for working collaboratively with us to develop the common sense commercial service air requirements he is announcing today. And we are proud to say they mirror much of what we have in place today at SEA. As we have seen a slow uptick in passenger numbers in the past 2 months after a 95% reduction in March and April, we spent a significant time talking to our partners and surveying travelers about a return to air travel. I'm happy to report that the majority of our surveyed respondents believe that SEA is taking the necessary steps to keep them healthy. Specifically, our Fly Healthy at SEA action plan is a mix of operational changes to protect passengers and employees, as well as a communications effort to educate about the new normal of air travel. For example, we have required face coverings or masks. We require a significant increased disinfectants of high-touch areas with medical-grade cleaning products. We have placed over 8,000 signs on verticals to reinforce social distancing. We have integrated touchless technology for a safer and more seamless airport experience, and we have done a whole lot more. We ran tests of temperature screening equipment and looking at other ways to ensure that we're identifying sick people before they travel. Through all this work, we led with science and partnership to bring confidence to customer experience. We agree with the governor and with our airline partners that what we really need is a uniform national approach to airport health and safety. Absent that national approach, however, we are all stepping up to show leadership in ensuring the traveling public enjoy a safe and healthy air travel experience. The governor's order ensures uniformity in standards across Washington airports, and it gives airport operators the latitude to explore additional innovative measures and technologies that promote health and safe travel. For example, there is growing interest in airports worldwide about the prospect of COVID-19 rapid tests being available at airports for travelers. Having concrete proof that travelers are not infected would not only increase consumer confidence in air travel, but also potentially open travel to other states and countries that currently ban Washington residents or require a 14-day quarantine. Our staff is exploring the feasibility of rapid testing at SCA, and it is clear that not only is the passenger demand there for this service, but also that there are vendors with the expertise and capacity to provide it. We're excited to continue a conversation about a variety of partnerships that could make COVID-19 rapid testing quickly available at SCA. We remain grateful to the governor for his leadership and to the partnership of Delta and Alaska Airlines at SCA. We're ready for you when you're ready to travel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. I appreciate all the work your team does and also your sustainability you've done at the port. We'd like to stand to allow these folks to answer your questions if you have some. Brooke Vatheuer, who is the Vice President for Strategic Performance, is also available from Alaska if you have any questions specifically. Then I'll stand for some other issues. But if anyone have questions of these folks, have at them.
Up first, we've got Essex from Cairo 7. Go ahead, ask your question, Essex.
Yes, and really for both of our airline executives, what are you doing to handle passengers who may get on the plane okay, but then forego some of the safety measures once they're on the plane?
Max, do you want to start? Okay, well, I'm happy to take that for Delta. As I mentioned, we have very strict policies. You are required to wear a mask on our flights. If you refuse to do so, you'll be put on a no-fly list, and we have done that for about 300 passengers at this point. And I think that low number does indicate the degree to which people are complying with the requirements that we've put forward. This is known to these customers through various communications that they receive right up to the moment that they get onto the airplane.
Yeah, and with Alaska, it's the same process. We have an escalation process for our flight attendants to follow, and if we cannot gain compliance when they land, the rest of their trip is canceled, and we refund, and we happily welcome them back when a mask is no longer required. But we're all about protecting, just like all the other airlines that are taking this initiative, is protecting all the guests on the aircraft with so much asymptomatic risk. It's very important that we don't take that chance.
If I may comment, these two companies typify the business leadership we've seen here in the state of Washington. Businesses have been enormously compliant, calling for their patrons to mask up to protect patrons and the employees. And that's why we've been very, very successful in driving some of these infection numbers down. And we just want to thank the business community and leaders who have worked through this, and we appreciate these two companies.
All right, up next, we'll go to Joe Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Go ahead and ask her.
Yeah, question each for Delta and Alaska. Given how so much of this pandemic and safety precautions have revolved around the danger of being indoors in close spaces with each other, regardless of how safe airline travel can make it these days, what do you think it's going to take to actually get people comfortable enough where you can even gain back like half your passengers?
I can start with that, and that is this is Max, by the way, and that's a struggle that we work with every day. As I mentioned in my prepared comments, we are working directly with some of the manufacturers and with Harvard to really try to get the data that would help gain some confidence with our guests to make them feel comfortable on the aircraft. It is a long road. We are seeing slight improvement. But all these multiple layers of protection are having an impact in the comfort level of our guests. And I think that was, as mentioned, not just with the port, but with Delta as well, is the guests that are traveling have a pretty good feeling about how well they are protected. But to get out to the general public, to get back up to a 50% even factor of our previous passengers is going to take a lot of work. And that's why we're continually pushing and continually partnering to really make the whole network improve.
Thanks, Max. I'm not going to predict when volumes are going to come back to a 50% level, but I will say creating levels of confidence is driven by helping people prepare for what they should expect when they get to the airport and what they should expect when they get on the airplane. I'm sure the public now is a lot more aware of what a HEPA filter is than they were before this crisis began. And the fact is Delta, as I mentioned, is testing every one of our employees, and we're creating a baseline in conjunction with the Mayo Clinic to help us understand what the infection rates are going to be for our employees versus the general public. And right now, all indications is that our flight attendants have indexed lower in terms of their infection rate compared to the general public as a whole. So we know that our precautions are working, but everybody has a different indication of what their risk tolerance is going to be. I think it's our job and it's Max's job to really go out there and ensure that people are prepared for what they can expect when they arrive at the airport and get on the airplane.
All right, up next, we've got Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you. I wanted to see if you could clarify one point, and then I had a question. The issue of rapid tests, are either airline using rapid tests right now for flight attendants and other employees on a daily basis? And then I'm wondering if there's any trends or measurements for regional airports finding a faster return for passengers. Are more people willing to try a smaller regional airport than, say, SeaTac?
Tony, did you want to take the testing question? At Alaska right now, we are prioritizing our response to those who may have come in contact, and we are not doing rapid testing for employees. I do know that Delta is doing that. We do look very closely at regional numbers and how that impacts travel, and it is a direct correlation, almost day by day, of what people are willing to get out in the system as they start to see numbers come up. So there is a correlation. Our in-flight crews, our pilots are about 60% as far as infection rate of the general public. So they do a great job of making sure they follow the safety protocols. They help us create them. They partner with us, and they make sure that they're in that safe environment. But the day-to-day testing, Alaska is prioritizing that for our healthcare providers.
Yeah, and for Delta, we are making available the CVS rapid test, as I mentioned, in the employee lounges at the airport.
Next, we'll go to Anna Boyko-Wyra with KUOW. Go ahead, Anna.
Hi there. Question for Max and Tony. So the CDC says that the information that airlines collect on passengers is not enough for good contact tracing. And early on in the pandemic, the CDC tried to increase the contact information that airlines are keeping on passengers, but your companies are part of an industry group that was against that rule. So now, why should anybody who's flying your airlines trust that, say, if there is somebody on their flight who has COVID, that they will be notified of their exposure?
I'll start with that and see if Brooke can add anything from the local side. But the contact tracing, we do have an individual that coordinates that for our carrier, and everything in the U.S. we track very, very close. I think there was some controversy over the tool that's currently under development that we will be able to use and get more precise, especially when it comes to international travel. So, Brooke, did I miss anything on that?
No, I think you're spot on, Max. We absolutely share information with the CDC. We've partnered with them locally, actually, in the airport when we've had situations, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I'll just add, agree with what Max said, and know that this is an ever-evolving process for the industry. We have no precedents to work from, so we just ask for patience from the public as we work through the challenges associated with information collecting and contact tracing.
All right, next we've got Glenn Farley with King 5. Go ahead, Glenn.
Really a question that goes out to all three of you, and with Tony and Lance, we've been through the airport looking at the question of building confidence among passengers. We've seen United, Lufthansa, some other carriers working on the rapid testing, but does the rapid testing sort of get you, short of a vaccine, about as close to a holy grail to be able to get those passenger numbers back up?
Yeah, Glenn, it's nice to hear you, and thanks again for your participation on our tour. I think as we look at this, it is not a silver bullet or a single use of things, but instead a layering of multiple protection opportunities for customers to adhere to social distancing by keeping the middle seats empty, ensuring that face masks are being worn, hospital level air quality provided by the HEPA level filters are all added on top of this. And there are a variety of different rapid tests that are available. You then run into who is collecting and managing the information from the customers. Is this a state level decision process, and what happens when you land in a different state with different protocols? I think these are all the things that we need to work out, but recognizing that individual measures to prevent the transmission are less effective than the layering approach that the airlines are taking in order to protect customers and employees.
And Glenn, just thanks for the question. Just as Tony said, we have had a layered approach with our Fly Healthy at SCA initiative here at the airport. The recent surveys that we've conducted with our passengers, they're overwhelmingly saying that rapid testing is one of the things that they would like to see us do at the airport. And that's one of the reasons why we're speaking to multiple vendors, multiple service providers right now to look at how we could actually provide that type of service here at the airport. It may very well, until a vaccine is found, or even when a vaccine is found, it might very well be a game changer in helping us to restore passenger confidence when they're trying to decide if they should travel again.
Yes, well stated by both Glenn and as the technologies and the availability comes further and further along, I think it's going to be easier to provide a quick, easy option that's non-invasive for our guests and start building that confidence back in and really be able to measure the true infection rate with our asymptomatic guests or passengers or travelers that may be coming through the system. So we are partnering and we're working towards solutions with that.
All right, and our last question for this Q&A portion, we've got Steve Kiggins with Q13. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, thanks so much for taking the question. Between just the two of your two airlines, hundreds have already been banned from flying, but are you two talking to each other about sharing that information? And next question for the governor is when should all the rest of the airports in the state come into compliance with these specifics? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that airlines are talking to each other, and the sharing of information is absolutely critical. Obviously, we are attaching our own perspectives and brand initiatives to things, and because we are such a large global airline, we have to do things at scale slightly differently. But if we don't all work together as an industry, we're not going to create the opportunity to bring people back. So we appreciate the relationship that we have with Alaska and through the Port of Seattle in order to adhere to rising all tides here.
Yeah, and to add to that, the actual sharing of the ban list, we're not able to do due to legal requirements. However, if we have somebody who has demonstrated that they're not willing to comply, Delta has the same standards that we do, and they're not going to allow them to fly either. And eventually they start to understand, oh, maybe I should comply if I want to get home. It is nice that we are, as Airlines for America, we are in step. We're holding that same standard, and we're making sure we're protecting all of our passengers. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Yes, I'll have to get back to you on the effective date. We'll get you that here in an hour or so for the airlines or for the airports.
And that concludes the airline Q&A section.
Well, thank you. These leaders are really helping us restore confidence in this incredibly important industry. We're an aviation state, and we like to travel. So I'm glad we're all working together to make this a safer environment. So thanks for what you're doing, and please wish your employees well. They're hardworking, and we want to take care of their health as well. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. With that, let's keep talking about aviation. We know about our state's incredibly long history in aerospace, our very productive, innovative culture, and the best machinists and designers and engineers in the world in aerospace that has allowed the Boeing Company to make great innovative products in our state. We know that partnership is very important to our state in very many ways. And now we have, we'd like to continue providing that great work, building the Boeing 787, very beautiful airplane in a lot of different ways. So I just wanted to share with the state that my administration has been in touch in several conversations with the Boeing Company about the prospects of continuing production of the 787. I've had conversations with the executive leadership on several occasions, as most recently as yesterday. Obviously, we are intent on continuing to make our case that this is the best place to make airplanes, has been, probably always will be. In fact, that's been confirmed by the Teal Group, an aerospace consulting firm, because we understand we have such an incredible talent base, both on the machinist side and on the engineering side. And we want to keep that cluster of productivity and innovation and quality manufacturing in the state of Washington. So we have asked now on several occasions the Boeing Company what the state could do to make sure we continue production of this plane in the state of Washington. And unfortunately, the Boeing Company has not offered us suggestions in this regard to date, but we will continue our efforts to share the good news story in the state of Washington, and we will continue to ask the Boeing Company what, if anything, the state of Washington could do to assure that this plane will continue to be made in the state of Washington. And we hope to hear further from the Boeing Company in this regard. We have a lot of things to talk about here in the state of Washington right now, but one is our continued heartache of tragedies across the country, not just in our state. That includes the tragedy of the loss of Breonna Taylor. We know that people are rightfully upset about this deep, deep tragedy. And we know that it is our obligation to move as a state to a more just and equitable society and law enforcement system. And we have to keep our eye on the ball to do that. And we are doing that. Our task force to make sure that we have a very independent investigations where there's violence, and that we have very independent and credible ways to make these prosecutorial decisions. That task force is continuing to meet and making good progress. I'm very confident we're going to do good things when we get the legislature back into session. Of course, this is not the only things we need to work on when it comes to increasing equity in our society. It's just two of the things. And I know other ideas are being pursued by the legislature to de-escalate these situations and reduce the prospects of these terrible tragedies. And we know many people are peacefully protesting and calling on that progress. And we need that progress. We also know that violence is not going to be helpful in that effort, and we cannot condone that violence. We don't want anybody further getting hurt. We want to reduce injuries to everybody and bring more equity to our society. And I want to assure people that we're going to be very vigorous in that regard. I'd like to talk about our revenue situation in the state of Washington. Yesterday, we received some very encouraging news from the State Economic and Revenue Forecast Council. In June, that council lowered the state's revenue projection for the next 3 years by nearly $9 billion. Yesterday's forecast cut that projection of a deficit almost in half. So our fiscal situation is markedly better than it appeared just a few months ago. And I think this is just one reason why it would not have been a good idea to have called a special session before we had this information. I urged caution and patience and sense to make these fiscal decisions. And given this, together with the work we've done to trim some of our expenditures already, that decision has paid off. This news, combined with the reserves as well as the savings that I have created through vetoes to the supplemental budget and a hiring freeze and the savings I directed to state agencies, we eliminated the 3% raise for some employees, and we've used furloughs and other means to reduce our spending. And that has reduced spending by hundreds of millions of dollars. So the combination of what I have done through an executive action, together with this new forecast, is very welcome news in that we are going to be okay during this biennium. So I'm glad we were patient. I'm glad we did not rush to slash budgets for mental health services for Washingtonians, or homeless service for Washingtonians, or health care for Washingtonians. Cutting budgets and services for these people who are in such difficult situations now because of the COVID situation, that would have been a very painful and terrible idea, and it turns out we were proven correct. The decisions to reduce those services have real consequences. Sometimes people, you can just say the word cut budgets and it's this simple, painless thing. In fact, that means real people don't get education, they don't get health care, they don't get mental health service. And now, because of the decisions we've made and this good news, we're in good shape for this biennium, but there will be more challenges in the upcoming biennium. So there's more work to do. And that is one reason why we continue to hope that Congress will get off the dime and pass a package to help states. States are desperate for this funds over the next several years. Republican and Democratic governors are saying that. And we continue to be hopeful that Congress will act to help. We know what is at stake in the future for the people who need mental health and who need homelessness services and who need health care. I'm glad we're in a better position, and I think a combination of some of our trimming of sales and this has put us in good position, much better position. So we're very hopeful that Congress will help out. But we have some other issues having to do with Washington, D.C. right now. And that is, I know many people are very concerned, as I am, about the threat to our voting rights here in Washington State and the ability for our votes to actually have an impact. The president's statements that he was not accepting of a peaceful transition if he does not win the electoral vote are more than disturbing. The consequences of that is to really try to strip away Washingtonians from their right to have their vote count. And right now, we think that's a very precious thing in our democracy. We think Republicans and Democrats and otherwise ought to have their votes count. And unfortunately, the president has threatened to ignore essentially electoral votes that come from states that count the ballots after the election day, which we do. And we do that in Washington on a bipartisan basis because we have found it's very safe, it's very convenient, and we count every vote. So I'm extremely concerned about this, and I am calling on everyone, certainly every public official in Washington, to let the White House know that that is unacceptable. We count every vote in Washington State. We know this mail-in ballot works, and we can't have a threat to this most basic tenet of democracy. It is a dangerous moment in our state when we have this threat to our right to vote, and that is not American. We need to say very simply to a president who loses an election, it's time to go. We don't know what's going to happen in this election, but we do know that we will stand for the ability of all Washingtonians of every party to have their vote count, and when they are counted, to have a candidate or a president to respect their votes. It is the people's United States, and that vote is what should count. Lastly, before I take questions, Wednesday marked the 6 months since we announced our initial stay home, stay healthy order. And looking back, I think there's a reason to be grateful that we've averted even a greater crisis. And that wasn't just possible because of the actions of the state or local governments. It has worked to reduce deaths in our state because Washingtonians themselves have been diligent, they have followed science, and they have had faith that we would get through this together. That is the reason today that there's probably 45, 46 states with more infections per capita than the state of Washington. Some states have infection numbers 10 times higher than the state of Washington. So it's been unfortunate that we have not had as much partnership from the federal government as we would like, but everywhere I've traveled in Washington, I've seen people committed to their health and their family's health and their community's health. And we've seen some business leaders today who've been associated with that effort, and I want to thank everybody for what they're doing. I don't think there's another time where we justifiably were more proud of our citizenry of what we're doing together in the state of Washington. I have today, Health Officer Kathy Lofi is here today too, if you have any questions. So with that, happy to stand for questions.
All right, first we'll go to Rachel LaCourte with AP. Go ahead, Rachel.
Governor, I wanted to talk about the phishing campaign that apparently the state's been targeted in. Do you know how many other states have been targeted in this, and if any of the phishing attempts here were successful?
I do not know. I've been advised that this is an attack on multiple entities, including other states. I do not have the number at my disposal. We also have seen recent attacks on some other on municipal entities, and this is a serious attack in volume. At the moment, the report we have is that it has not compromised state services, and that is important to say. But we intend to be very, very alert and aggressive to defend ourselves. We are standing up the Emergency Operations Center so we can use the full emergency resources and power of the state of Washington against this nefarious attack. That includes the National Guard. In our National Guard, we're very fortunate. We have one of the best cybersecurity elements of our Washington National Guard. And when I've gone to talk to some of the security experts, including the FBI, they've told me that this is one of, if not the best National Guard units in the country on this issue, in part because we have so much talent in the software industry that are also in the National Guard. So all of our state agencies are involved in this effort. WATEC is involved in this effort. We have a very vigorous effort underway. So I can tell you this, we take this very seriously, and it's been all hands on deck.
Rachel, did you want to ask a follow-up?
Yes. Was there any particular agency that was targeted more than others, and was this ransomware or some other type of cyber attack?
So I'm advised that there have been a couple agencies, but I can't tell you exactly which ones, who've had more traffic than others. To my knowledge, we have not had any ransomware activity or requests. But that's exactly what we want to avoid, obviously. And that's where we are using every resource at our disposal to prevent these criminals, and that's what they are, from potentially putting us in that position. We are not in that position today. We intend to do everything humanly possible to prevent that from occurring.
All right, next we've got Joe Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Go ahead, Joe.
Governor, you said you've talked with Boeing executives about the 787 line, but they haven't given you anything back that the state might be able to do. What have they said about their potential decision and how you might be able to work with them on it?
Well, I'm not going to disclose the entire nature of our conversation because we are continuing those conversations. But in general, what I can tell you is that they have said that, number one, they have not made a decision on whether or not to consolidate 787 production in just one center. So that's the first pertinent thing they have said. They have not made a decision that they will have only one production center. The second thing they have said is that they are looking at all of the data that they consider relevant to make that decision. Third, they will continue to speak to us, which is a good thing. And basically, that's what they've told us. And they have told us also that they intend to have and will have a very, very robust presence in the state of Washington with tens of thousands of employees on multiple airplanes continuing in the state of Washington in any regard. We, of course, have asked if there's anything we can do to make sure that production continues here. And to date, the company has not given us any ideas in that regard. We'll continue to ask.
Joe, did you want to ask a follow-up? Joe, did you want to ask a follow-up?
No, thanks.
All right. Next, we will go to Jim Camden with the spokesman review. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. A quick follow-up to Joe's question. Have you mentioned anything that the state might do if Boeing pulls 787 production out of Washington, because they got significant tax breaks to bring 787 production here, didn't they?
Yes, but we have not discussed what any action by the state of Washington pending their decision.
Jim, did you want to ask a follow-up?
On something you mentioned on another topic, on COVID, the state is, as you said, has many states that have a higher rate of infection than Washington does. How soon might the state then come off of the limbo that it's on for the moving through the phases?
Well, as we've talked about on many occasions, we look at this every single day, and we'd like it to be as soon as humanly possible. What I can tell you that we've been able to open up considerable activity in a different way than the phase approach. We've been opening up Washington through an activity-based opening program. So we have opened, this in the last month, we have opened up agritourism, which is a very enjoyable activity and important for hayrides and corn mazes and a whole host of things, petting zoos and the like. We have opened up activities for weddings and funerals, and this is actually an industry in our state, as you know. We have opened up gyms and indoor facilities in a number of places, and we have found a way to do that, I believe, safely. We have opened up, as we just talked about, meeting areas and convention sites, if you will. That's really important for the tourism business so that people can come in and have meetings. If a corporation wants to have a meeting, we now are allowing that. That's actually a pretty big deal for a lot of different reasons, including the travel business. We've opened up bowling alleys, and we have opened up museums. So we've had a lot of opening activity in the last month. And we're continuing to look at these on a daily basis, frankly, to look if there's things we can do on an individual basis. So as far as the phased approach, we will continue to look at our numbers, and I've been pleased that they have been coming down. We are turning the tide, but we've got to keep turning it. We want to get kids back to school. And we know we're bringing some of the kids back to school now in some of the lower grades. That's great to see. And the more we reduce these infection rates and numbers, the faster we'll be able to get our kids back to school. And that's what these protocols are designed to do. That's a high priority for us.
All right, next we'll go to Keith Eldridge with Como TV. Go ahead, Keith.
We didn't have our regular briefing this week, so for you and Dr. Lofi, how do we stand in the overall COVID fight with the decline in numbers, but the possible leveling off with the Labor Day?
Dr. Lofi, you want to take that?
Sure. So I think you're asking maybe about the decrease in testing that we've had since the Labor Day weekend. I think it's what you're getting at. So we have had a decline in our testing since around Labor Day. We think that is partly due to the Labor Day weekend and then the smoke event that we had following that. So it always is a little bit difficult to interpret our case counts when our testing volume changes. I think the good news is that our test positivity is remaining pretty low, around 3% for the state. That is good. I am seeing, starting to see a few signals in the data that we may be starting to level off a little bit in terms of our COVID-19 activity, but it's a little bit too early to tell, what exactly is going to happen over the next week or two. So a lot of that data I'm looking at is that preliminary data that is not 90% complete yet.
If I can add, we talked about this a little bit last time, but we saw these wonderful pictures of college students returning to their dorms. Even though we're having remote activities in the classes, the students are congregating in the dorms. We are going to watch this very closely. We just cannot have the socialization that normally would occur in a dorm or a fraternity because it is going to lead to big spikes. We had 800 or 900 cases in Pullman because of this. I just mentioned this. Again, we ask people to be as resourceful in talking to students, to ask them to save us in the next few months, to avoid parties, to avoid being close without masks. This is a moment we really need their leadership. And if we get it, we're going to be in a healthier position, and we can continue to reopen, including, going back to watching football games in the stadium, going back to class. And we need your help to be able to do that.
Keith, did you want to ask a follow-up?
Yeah, on that vein, is there any thought of relinquishing the curfew on alcohol sales past 10 p.m.?
We are always considering this. I know some of the businesses have asked us to consider that. At the moment, we're not making that change. But again, the lower we can get these numbers down, the more students who go to a dorm but don't socialize and infect everyone and then go home and infect their parents, the more people who wear a mask when they go into a business, the more people who don't go in and have a big party with their family as much as they love to in a living room for an hour or two. The more people who don't watch the great Seahawks and the incredible Russell Wilson, who had the 2 best games in world history in the last couple of weeks. But the more people we watch his spectacular success at a distance, the more we can do the things like, opening up these hours of service. I note that the United Kingdom got their numbers down, then they opened up their restaurants and their pubs, which is a big deal in the United Kingdom. Their numbers have now started to skyrocket, and so they now have a restriction that they are not releasing for service after 10 p.m. So we are learning some other things that some of the lifting of these restrictions has resulted in significant explosion of these cases. Now, again, this is difficult because we love all our other states. But if you compare our state and our experience to other states who have lifted these restrictions, it is markedly different. North Dakota today, and it's a beautiful state, and I know we suffer with them because they're having a lot more COVID cases. Their rate is 10 times higher than ours. And I have to believe it has something to do with the fact that they continue to reject the kind of things that we have done, and the things we've done are difficult and painful, but they have been successful in saving lives, and there is no question about that. And I love every Washingtonian, and I think we ought to save their lives, and that's what we're doing.
All right, next we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Go ahead, Jerry.
Governor, you mentioned the revenue forecast and the picture for this biennium. Past years, when the economy was going pretty well, you had pursued a capital gains tax. At this point, are you going to pursue a capital gains tax in 2021?
We just can't speculate about fiscal issues until we have more information. So I know there's 1,000 questions out there, but it's just fruitless to speculate at this moment, not knowing the fiscal condition of the state. I do appreciate you mentioning our incredible economic success until COVID hit us. We're very proud of that. We've had probably the best economy in the United States because of our innovative economy, because we've treated families well, because we've got the best family medical leave, the first long-term care bill, the highest minimum wage, the single best financial aid package for students so people can become engineers and design great software and airplanes. All of the things we've done led to arguably the best economy in the United States. And now we're going to do the best we can to get back to that incredible plateau of great achievement as soon as we can. But thanks for reminding us of our success, Jerry.
Jerry, did you want to ask a follow-up?
Sure. California's governor earlier this week issued an executive order restricting new car sales in California to only zero-emission vehicles starting in 2035. Are you considering a similar executive order for Washington? And if maybe not today, but is it on your radar for 2021 as well?
Well, we're focused on the clean fuel standard. We're focused on a Washington state approach, and I think this has every reason to believe can be very, very successful. And we need to pass a clean fuel standard because I believe it will have a very beneficial impact to reduce carbon emissions from our transportation sector, and it simultaneously help consumers get access to cleaner fuels. So I'm focused on that.
Okay, I think we've got time for two more folks. Up next, we've got Essex Porter with Cairo 7. Go ahead.
Governor, let me take you back to travel for a moment. When you listen to those airline executives, when you look at the new standards that the state is requiring, are you ready to hop on a plane and fly the grandkids to Disneyland?
Well, my kids are more sort of nature folks. They like to go to national parks more than Disneyland, but please don't tell them I said that, but they might challenge that, I suppose. Look, travel is an individual decision. No thing we do today has zero risk. In my own life, you just make a decision how important a particular travel is, and then you make a decision. But I do know this, because what we're doing today, it is going to be safer tomorrow than it was yesterday. And I'm glad we're taking these steps to increase people's confidence. I think it will help.
Essex, did you want to ask a follow-up?
No, thank you. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
All right. And next, we'll go to Anna Boyke-Warak with KUOW. Go ahead.
Hi, Governor. Going back to the phishing attacks, when did they start and where did they come from?
We limit some of our sharing of information while we're defending ourselves from these attacks. We don't want the bad guys to know what we know too much and what we're doing about it. So to some degree, we limit the distribution of some information about this, but it has been sooner than this morning, I will tell you that. Beyond that, I won't really go. And you ask another part of this. What was your second question? You had a two-part question there, I thought. Did I miss one part?
Yeah, where did they come from? Do you know the source?
We believe that we do in combination with our federal partners and our Microsoft partners, we by and large believe they know, and it's not a healthy organization.
Anna, did you want to ask a follow-up?
Yeah, any more details you can say on who might have generated the attacks, and then how many state and municipal agencies in all were targeted?
I don't have the total number. All I am advised that there are multiple targets of this general attack from the same entity. I just can't share with you the entity. I think that would be risking reducing our effectiveness of defending ourselves. It is difficult because, you know, I got an award from a news organization as the most transparent administration for maybe a long time. We're proud of that transparency. But I know people understand when you're in the middle of the battle, to tell too much of your battle plans to the enemy is just, we just have to be effective in protecting ourselves right now.
Do you have any closing remarks?
No, I want to thank you, and be well, and be safe, and wash your hands and mask up. Thanks a lot.